The sun blazed relentlessly over Ouagadougou, casting long, wavering shadows across the cracked earth and faded shop fronts. Heat waves shimmered in the air, making the horizon look like a mirage. The midday hustle of the market spilled into the streets, children chasing each other barefoot, vendors fanning themselves as they called out prices for tomatoes and mangoes, the scent of grilled meat mixing with dust and exhaust. A black government convoy, flanked by motorcycle escorts, rolled slowly through the crowded main road. Inside the lead vehicle sat Ibrahim Traoré, the young leader of Burkina Faso, fresh from an unannounced inspection of a rural clinic on the city's outskirts. He had gone there quietly without prior warning to see for himself the state of healthcare in the poorest parts of his country. What he had seen inside weighed heavily on him: bare shelves, exhausted nurses, mothers clutching sick babies while waiting for medicine that might never come. As the vehicles approached a narrow turn, Ibrahim's gaze, ever alert despite the tinted glass, caught a flicker of movement near the edge of the clinic's crumbling outer wall. It was quick, almost easy to miss, but something about it snagged at him: a hunched figure, still a stone except for the trembling of thin shoulders. He leaned forward in his seat for a better look, ignoring the low murmur of his aide who was briefing him about his next meeting. It was a woman, young, though hardship had etched fine lines into her skin. She sat in the dirt, her knees drawn up, a bundle in her lap wrapped in faded cloth. The bundle shifted weakly, and Ibrahim realized it was not cloth at all, it was a child. The boy's small chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. The mother's head was bent low, her forehead pressed against his, her lips moving rapidly. In what could have been a prayer or a lullaby, something in Ibrahim's chest tightened. He rapped sharply on the glass, signaling the driver to stop. Sir, it's not safe to linger here, his head of security muttered immediately from the front seat. We should proceed. Stop the car, Ibrahim said again, his voice calm but leaving no room for argument. The driver obeyed. Before the vehicle had fully halted, Ibrahim opened the door. The sudden blast of dry, hot air met him instantly, carrying with it the smell of dust, sweat, and the faint metallic tang of sickness. He stepped out onto the uneven ground, the crunch of gravel under his boots drawing the attention of those nearby. The woman looked up, startled by the shadow falling over her. Her eyes, large, dark, and red-rimmed from crying, met his. For a moment, she didn't seem to register who he was. She only saw a man standing before her, his presence breaking the fragile bubble of her grief. Ibrahim crouched so that they were on the same level. The dirt clung to his trousers, but he didn't care. What's wrong with your son? He asked, his voice low, the words slow enough that she could hear the sincerity in each one. The woman blinked rapidly, her lips trembling. She swallowed hard before answering. He is very sick, fever, 3 days now. They say he needs medicine, strong medicine, but the clinic has none. Even if they had it, Her voice faltered. She looked down, unable to meet his eyes, as if ashamed of the truth she was about to speak. I cannot pay. I have nothing left. I sold my last goat last month so we could eat. The child in her arms let out a faint whimper, his voice so thin it barely sounded human. His lips were cracked and dry, his skin flushed with heat. He opened his eyes, briefly hollow, glassy eyes that didn't seem to see anything, and then closed them again. Exhausted by even that small effort, Ibrahim felt a heaviness settle in his chest. It wasn't the first time he had seen suffering years. In the military and public service had shown him more than enough, but this moment struck differently. It was intimate, raw, stripped of any politics or speeches. Here was a mother fighting a losing battle, with nothing but her love to keep her child alive. Behind him, his security detail shifted nervously. Sir, we really need to keep moving, one of them urged. This area isn't secured, and the crowd, but Ibrahim didn't move. He reached for the canteen strapped to his belt, unscrewed the cap, and held it out to the mother. Give him a little, he said, slowly. Asterisk, the woman hesitated, glancing between the canteen and his face, unsure whether to accept. Ibrahim nodded reassuringly. It's clean. Go ahead. Asterisk, her hands shook as she tipped the canteen to her son's lips. The boy's mouth opened slightly, and a few drops of water slid past his cracked lips. He swallowed weakly, then turned his face toward her chest again, curling in closer. Asterisk, how long has he been like this? Ibrahim asked, his eyes fixed on the boy. Asterisk, 4 days, she whispered. It started with cough, then fever. The nurse said if I could take him to the city hospital, maybe he would live. But that is far, and even the bus? I have no money. I tried to get help, but she broke off, tears spilling freely now. He's all I have. His father is gone. If I lose him... Her voice crumbled, the rest swallowed by sobs. Ibrahim's jaw tightened. He knew there were 1,000 mothers like her across the country. He had read the reports, seen the statistics, but numbers on paper could never convey the tremble in a mother's voice or the way. Her fingers clung to her child as though holding him tighter might anchor his soul to the earth. Asterisk. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. With a few quick swipes, he called his personal physician. Doctor, I need you at the rural clinic near Sector 7 immediately. Bring whatever is necessary, antibiotics, fluids, oxygen. And bring the emergency team now. His voice was quiet, but the urgency in it was unmistakable. Asterisk, he hung up and turned to one of his aides. Send word to the Ministry of Health dispatch more supplies to this clinic today. Not tomorrow, today. The aide nodded, already pulling out his own phone. People nearby had begun to notice. A small crowd was forming, market vendors, passers-by. Even a few clinic patients had stepped outside to see what was happening. They whispered to one another in disbelief. It wasn't every day the president stopped in the street, much less knelt in the dirt beside a poor mother. Asterisk, one elderly man, leaning heavily on a wooden cane, shuffled closer. Is that really him? He asked in a hushed voice. A woman beside him nodded slowly, her eyes wide. Asterisk, Ibrahim ignored the murmurs. He stayed crouched, speaking softly to the mother. What is your name? Salamata, she said, brushing the sweat-damp hair from her son's forehead. And his? Asterisk, Abdullah. Asterisk, Ibrahim looked at the boy again, committing the name to memory. Salamata, I promise you he will get the help he needs right now. Asterisk, she bit her lip, torn between hope and disbelief. People, they promise many things, she said quietly, but my son is still sick. Watch me, Ibrahim replied simply. The sound of approaching engines broke through the murmurs of the crowd. The convoy had halted, but now a smaller vehicle peeled away and sped toward them. Inside were medical personnel from his detail paramedics and a nurse carrying a small field kit. They moved quickly, setting down a portable four-stand, preparing. A saline drip, checking the boy's temperature and pulse. Asterisk, one of the medics looked up at Ibrahim. He's in danger, sir. We need to stabilize him before we move him. Do it, Ibrahim said. As they worked, Ibrahim remained close, one hand lightly resting on the boy's thin shoulder. His other hand stayed near Salamata's, as if to anchor her as much as her son. She kept glancing at him, her expression still caught between fear and cautious hope. Asterisk, the medics slipped a tiny needle into the boy's arm. Starting the four, they dabbed his forehead with cool cloths and gave him a measured dose of medication. Slowly, the boy's breathing eased, though his eyes remained shut. Asterisk, Ibrahim took off his cap and wiped the sweat from his brow. The sun was still merciless overhead, the heat pressing down like a weight, but he didn't move to the shade. He knew his presence was more than symbolic right now. It was a signal to the mother, to the crowd, to his own team that this was where the country's attention should be. Asterisk, and so he stayed, the dust clinging to his boots, his knee pressing into the hot ground until the boy's pulse strengthened under the medic's fingertips. Asterisk. The medical team worked with the efficiency of people who knew every second counted. The portable oxygen tank hissed softly as one of the medics adjusted the flow, placing a small mask over Abdullah's face. His breathing, once ragged and shallow, began to slow into a more even rhythm. Still, his skin was hot to the touch, the fever clinging stubbornly to his tiny body. Salamata hovered over him, her eyes darting between the tubes and wires, fear flickering in every glance. Ibrahim remained. Beside her, his presence a quiet pillar of calm. He didn't speak much, but when he did, his voice was steady, carrying the weight of someone who would not allow this child to be another name lost to poverty. He didn't flinch at the stares from the growing crowd, nor at the sound of murmurs and the click of phone cameras. To him, the rest of the world had faded. Only this mother and child remained in sharp focus. When the lead medic finally stood up, he addressed Ibrahim with a firm nod. He's stable enough for transport now, sir, but we need to get him to a fully equipped hospital quickly. His condition is still fragile. Ibrahim didn't hesitate. The National Hospital, full pediatric care. I'll arrange everything. Salamata's hand shot out, gripping his sleeve. Her voice shook. Sir, I can't pay for such a hospital. Even the transport. He cut her off gently but decisively. You will not pay a single franc. Everything, his treatment, his medicine, his recovery will be taken care of. Do you understand? Her lips parted, but no words came. For a second, she just stared at him, as if trying to memorize his face in case she woke up tomorrow and discovered it was all a dream. Then the tears came again, silent this time, rolling down her cheeks as she nodded. The medical convoy arrived within minutes, sirens wailing faintly in the distance before cutting off as the vehicles pulled up. The back doors of the ambulance swung open, revealing a clean, well-equipped interior. The medics worked quickly to lift Abdoulaye onto a stretcher, his tiny arms still tethered to the floor. Salamata scrambled to follow, panic flashing in her eyes. As they began to wheel him toward the ambulance, Ibrahim placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Go with him, you will be safe, I'll meet you there. She nodded quickly, climbing into the vehicle without taking her eyes off her son. The doors closed and the ambulance pulled away, weaving through the street with a police escort clearing. The path ahead, as the dust settled, Ibrahim turned back toward the clinic. The crowd was still there, watching him. Some faces were filled with awe, others with a quiet kind of disbelief. Many of them were mothers themselves, holding their own children close. One man stepped forward, his hands rough and calloused from years of labor. Sir, he said in a voice hoarse from the sun and dust, we have been forgotten here, no medicines. No doctors most days, you've seen it yourself now. I've seen it, Ibrahim replied evenly. And I won't forget it. He pulled aside his aide and spoke in a low tone, giving orders that would set in motion more than just a one-time delivery of supplies. The rural clinic would receive an emergency restock that very day, and an assessment team would be dispatched to determine what was needed to keep it running properly. He also told his aide to begin drafting a plan to increase rural healthcare funding, something he had promised in speeches before, but now felt with a renewed urgency. By the time Ibrahim reached the hospital in the city, the sun was already lowering toward the horizon, painting the sky in deep golds and oranges. The air was cooler now, but the weight of the day still pressed on his shoulders. Inside the hospital, the sterile smell of disinfectant replaced the dusty air of the village. Nurses in crisp uniforms moved with quiet efficiency, their voices hushed out of respect for the patients resting in dimly lit wards. He found Salamata in a small room on the pediatric floor, sitting in a chair beside her son's bed. Abdoulaye was asleep, his face calmer now, the fever beginning to ease under the care of the doctors. The 4 drips still fed into his arm, and an oxygen tube ran gently under his nose. His breathing was steady, almost peaceful. When she saw Ibrahim enter, Salamata stood quickly, her hands twisting nervously in the fabric of her skirt. Sir, I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to, he said, motioning for her to sit again. Just take care of him. That's all I ask. She hesitated, then said softly, people will talk about this. They will say. A leader came to help one mother and her child, but, sir, what about all the others? There are so many like me. Asterisk, her words cut deep, not as a criticism but as a truth he already knew. He sat in the chair across from her, leaning forward. Then we will make sure no one else has to go through what you went through. This is not charity, Salamata, it's responsibility. And I will see it done. Asterisk, she lowered her gaze, overcome by the weight of what he was promising. Asterisk, later, as Ibrahim left the hospital, the corridors buzzed with whispers. Word had spread among the staff and patients how the president had personally brought in a sick child from the street, stayed until he was stable, and pledged to overhaul the rural clinic system. Asterisk, by nightfall, the story had traveled far beyond the hospital walls. Videos taken by bystanders earlier in the day flooded social media. Grainy clips of Ibrahim kneeling in the dirt, handing water to a sick boy, calling in a medical team. Comments poured in from across the country and even beyond its borders. Some praised him as a man of the people, a leader who understood the struggles of the poor. Others questioned whether this was a one-time act or the beginning of lasting change. Asterisk, in the quiet of his office later that night, Ibrahim sat alone, the glow from his desk lamp casting long shadows across the room. The day's events replayed. In his mind, the mother's trembling voice, the boy's fevered face, the way hope had slowly returned to her eyes as the medics worked. Asterisk, he knew that saving one child would not erase the suffering of thousands more. But it could be a spark. And sparks, if fanned carefully, could ignite something larger, something that burned through indifference and inaction. Asterisk, far across the city. In the softly lit hospital room, Salamata sat awake beside her son, listening to the gentle rhythm of his breathing. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to close her eyes without fear, knowing that at least for tonight he was safe. In her heart she carried not just gratitude but a cautious hope that the promise made to her in the dust and heat of the afternoon was one that might change the lives of many more mothers like her. Asterisk. And so the night settled over Ouagadougou, heavy with the scent of cooling earth and the murmurs of a city unaware that a single act of compassion on a roadside had already begun to ripple outward, touching lives in ways no one could yet measure. Asterisk.